Good evening and thank you for staying with us right here on Voice of the People 90.3 FM. My name is Esther Wachiko, here are the top stories. Northern elders send message to President Tinubu over Rivers state of emergency crisis. Presidency defends Tinubu's decision as legal, states it's justified. Fubara reportedly relocates to Osun State after suspension as governor. Governor Deleke declares talks to turn curfew as Ibon-Ilobo conflict deepens. Kanu tenders apology to Justice Binta Inyako as prosecutors begin trial today. Details now. Thank you for staying with us. The Northern Elders has released a message to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu urging him to reverse the suspension of Rivers State Governor Sim Fubara and members of the State House of Assembly. The House of Representatives and the Senate on Thursday in a voice vote had ratified President Tinubu's state of emergency in Rivers State. However, in a statement, the Northern Elders Forum spokesperson Professor Abubakar Jika Jidiri urged President to reinstate both the governor and his deputy, emphasizing that the suspension was unjustified. While acknowledging that Section 305 of the 1999 Constitution as amended grants the President the authority to declare a state of emergency in any part of the country, the Nigerian Elders Forum or Northern Elders Forum argued that the conditions required for such an action were absent in Rivers State. They maintain that none of these conditions apply to Rivers. According to them, it is a public knowledge and indisputable fact that none of these conditions actually happened in Rivers State, except perhaps for personal vendetta in alliance with the President's 7th Federal Minister of the FCT and the immediate past governor of Rivers State, who has been in personal conflict with the suspended governor for selfish interest rather than public good, end quote. The group urged the federal government to prioritize a lasting solution to the political turmoil in Rivers, warning that suspending elected officials undermines democracy and public trust. Meanwhile, the presidency, in its reaction to the Northern Elders Forum, has disclosed that the president's decision to declare a state of emergency in Rivers State was a move that was both legal and necessary to restore stability. According to the president's special advisor on media and public communications, Sunday Diary, the declaration resulted in the suspension, not removal, of Governor Sim Fubara, his deputy, and the state lawmakers. Diary emphasized that Tinubu acted within his constitutional powers to prevent the escalating crisis from threatening democracy and national security. In a statement today, Diary described the intervention as a constitutional step taken in the national interest. Rivers posed a serious threat to democracy and stability. He explained that the escalating crisis in Rivers left the president with no alternative but to step in as conflicting factions had failed to reach a peaceful resolution. Diary further stated that the worsening situation in Rivers had posed a significant threat to both democracy and national stability, necessitating decisive action from the president. He stressed that Tinubu's decision was well within his constitutional authority and should be viewed as a temporary measure to restore order rather than a political maneuver. There is a 6-month window for the return to normalcy. It is in this light that we must understand that the most appropriate, timely, and constitutional option available to Mr. Prav, a state of emergency. Diary also dismissed claims that the move was politically motivated, emphasizing that it was purely a constitutional response to prevent the state from descending into anarchy. Meanwhile, the federal government has released the withheld local government elections to the sole administrator of Rivers State, Ibok Ete Ibas. This was confirmed today during a meeting with heads of local government administrations in Port Harcourt, the state capital. He also assured that necessary steps have been put in motion to ensure the prompt payment of workers' salaries. The sole administrator lamented that the prevailing economic hardship in the Niger Delta and the suffering of its people is unacceptable despite the region's wealth of natural resources. He said, and I quote, "I feel the pain of the workers." He assured that the administration would ensure that salaries are paid without delay. Ibas, during the meeting, directed all local government areas to submit their wage bills, supported by relevant documentation, through the office of the head of service. He urged the local government administrators to ensure that peace prevails in their respective domains. Well, President of the Nigerian Union of Local Government Employees and Administrator of Port Harcourt Local Government Area, Clifford Paul, who responded on behalf of his colleagues, commended the federal government for appointing the sole administrator. He pledged to support peace and stability while urging the administrator to prioritize the workers' welfare. He disclosed that local government workers were currently owed 2 months' salaries but are hopeful to get paid now that the withheld allocations have been released. Meanwhile, the Senator Victor Umem, representing Anambra Central Senatorial District, has firmly denied allegations that he received bribes in dollars to support the state of emergency declared in Rivers State by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. While due to a report which was circulated on an online news platform, Sahara Reporters, Umar then reacted, condemning the claim as baseless and warned the media outlet against blackmail. He noted that this was the third time the platform had published false reports against him. Well, you will recall that on Wednesday, Sahara Reporters alleged that senators were bribed with $10,000 each to approve the suspension of Rivers State Governor Fubara, further claiming that Umar played a role in distributing the funds to a private lodge belonging to Senate President Godswill Akpabio in Abuja. However, Umar refuted these allegations, stating categorically that he was neither present at any such meeting nor involved in any financial transactions related to the state of emergency. Explaining his whereabouts, the senator disclosed that on Tuesday evening he attended an iftar gathering at the Senate House, or rather the Senate's guest house, where he was invited to offer a Christian prayer after Senator Adamu Aleru had said the Muslim prayers. He also disclosed that he would not be deterred and that the false information about him was becoming a serious blackmail, warning the publication to stop. He will not be distracted by their false reports, and however disclosed, he will continue to hold the integrity of his constituency. And still in Rivers this evening, the suspended governor, Fubara, following the declaration of a state of emergency, has reportedly moved his family to Bayelsa State. This development comes after President Bola Tinubu's decisive action on March 18, suspending Fubara, his deputy Ngozi Udu, and all elected members of the Rivers House of Assembly. While the ongoing crisis, which has supposedly led to some clashes, legislative gridlock, and legal disputes that effectively paralyzed the state's administration, the political instability prompted the president accordingly to intervene with the suspension of key state officials. Well, the Bayelsa State Governor Doyedire offered refuge to Fubara and his family amidst the turmoil. On Wednesday, however, the move took place under reduced security presence, with some armored personnel carriers and security personnel still stationed at the premises. However, the government house was described as relatively quiet following their departure. In response to the growing crisis, President Tinubu, as you do know, appointed former Chief of Naval Staff Admiral Ibok Etta Ibas as the sole administrator of Rivers State. Well, moving on to Osun State, tensions have flared once more between the Ifon and Ilobu communities there, prompting Governor Ademola Adeleke to reimpose an extended dusk-to-dawn curfew in an attempt to restore order. The latest outbreak of violence, which occurred early on this morning, has left at least 30 people wounded, while many residents, including women and children, have been displaced. The conflict, rooted in a long-standing land dispute between Ifon in Orolu local government area and Ilobu in Irakpodu local government area, has seen a dangerous escalation despite previous interventions. In response, Governor Adeleke extended the existing curfew from its initial 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. time frame for a stricter 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. restriction. The directive, which took immediate effect immediately, was communicated through a statement by the Commissioner for Information and Public Enlightenment, Kolapo Alimi. Authorities have intensified security efforts, deploying a joint task force comprising the Nigerian Army, Nigerian Police, and the Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps for round-the-clock surveillance. Well, in this latest development, the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, Nnamdi Kanu, has apologized to Justice Binta Nyako of the Federal High Court in Abuja for his outburst and other things that led to her withdrawing from presiding over his trial. According to Nnamdi Kanu, he apologized at the start of his trial over alleged treason and terrorism before a new Judge James Omotosho of the Federal High Court. Speaking through his lawyer Kanu Agabi, who has taken over from Aloy Ijimako, Kanu says the attack on Justice Binta Nyako was unjustified. Apologies were also rendered to the prosecution team led by Adegboyega Awomolo and to his own team, which he attacked verbally. The IPOB leader subsequently pleaded not guilty to the 7-count charge leveled against him by the Nigerian government. The court later adjourned the case to the 29th of April for a full-blown trial as it grants accelerated hearing on the grounds that the matter has dragged on for 10 years. You're currently listening to the World News right here on Voice of the People, 90.3 FM. We'll take a very short break. When we return, we'll head into a news analysis segment where obviously I'll be joined via the telephone with Mr. Elvis Elimehele, who is a journalist, also a political and national affairs commentator. To kindly stay with us. All right, you're still listening to the World News right here on Voice of the People, 90.3 FM. And just before we head into a news analysis segment, we actually have this information where the court has actually blocked INEC from receiving petitions to recall Senator Natasha Akpoti. The Federal High Court sitting in Lokoja has granted an interim injunction stopping the Independent National Electoral Commission from receiving, accepting, or acting on any petition allegedly containing fictitious signatures and names aimed at initiating a recall process against Senator Natasha Akpoti Idwagan. Justice Isaac Dashan, during the ruling, ordered that INEC, its staff, agents, privies or assigns must not receive, accept or act in any way whatsoever on any purported petition submitted to the defendant by any person or persons whatsoever containing fictitious signatures and names of purported members of Kogi State Central Senatorial District of Kogi State, and must not conduct any referendum whatsoever upon such petition for the purpose of initiating a recall process of Senator Natasha Akpoti Idwagan as senator represented the said senatorial district in the Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, pending the determination of a motion of notice. The court's decision followed an ex parte application for an interim injunction filed by Aneba Jacob Ogirima and 4 others who are registered voters in Kogi Central. The application, supported by an affidavit of extreme urgency, was moved by Smart Nwachimere, Esquire of West Idahosa. Justice Dashan further ordered that the enrolled order of the Honorable Court alongside the motion of notice be served on the defendant respondent pending the determination of the substantive suit. The case has been adjourned to May 6, 2025 for a report on service and further mention. Mr. Elvis Elimehele is already on the telephone with me this evening. Mr. Elvis, good evening, and how are you today?
Good evening, Esther. I'm good. And you?
I'm fine. Thank you very much for joining me today. Let me first off start off with the recall of Senator Natasha Akpoti. Some red members of her constituents said they woke up one morning and they saw some persons who say that they had some poverty alleviation program and they required them to put in their name, sign, and even bring in their voters card, not knowing that this was a recall process. But while they did all of that, they didn't see any poverty alleviation item anywhere whatsoever. Only the few who could read were able to see what that was. How do you describe this kind of scenario within our federal character or within our administration right now?
What is going on, Esther, in Kogi State is the Ojoro of APC. It's so shameful that elected senator of the distinguished Senate of Nigeria, Natasha has become an issue just because the Senate leadership do not want to speak the truth to the issues she raised before Nigeria. That is what we should be looking at. Every diversion that is coming from APC, to call a dog bad name to hang it, exercise in futility. I thank God that Natasha is a smart lady and she has done what is expected of her to be done. Democracy is all about going to court, let the court interpret every gray area that we are not clear about. That's why we always talk about strengthening judicial system in the country where democratic government is being practiced. So going to court is a good one. I saw all that ambush they wanted to quickly do to, come up with a kangaroo recall processes. And I thank God for some of those people that were in that empowerment grant. I saw that this is not how empowerment is shared. Come with your voter passport, voter's card, and come and fill a form. All the empowerment, even the one Natasha has given out by herself to that Central Senatorial District, it was so lavish, nobody filled form. So how come about the filling of form? Some of them became suspicious and knew that this was an ambush against the senator they voted for. And they rejected it. And today, the court has said, yes, this matter it's already before them. And the people who are, planning this should hold on. I think it's a good one. And we are going to see more of this. They are dealing with.
Mr. Elvis, Seriaka Dixon, the senator representing Bayelsa West, actually disclosed that Godswill wanted to intimidate him in the house because he felt that with the exchange that happened when he was talking about the state of emergency that was declared in Rivers State. Dixon reiterated his position on the floor that the Senate president was very unfair to him by trying to censor his freedom of expression and by deliberately misrepresenting the input of what he said in the broadcast. Now, Seriaka Dixon was on a broadcast on, I think, Arise Television, talking about the fact that that kind of state of emergency declared by the president did not follow due protocol, right? Now, while Seriaka Dixon was trying to respond to the Senate when they were trying to pass the motion, he got up to speak, and the Senate president, that is Godswill, said, excuse me, I'm presiding. I heard what you said on television. So Seriaka Dixon said, excuse me, I need to speak. We need to accord each other that respect. And this was the same thing Senator Natasha was talking about, where if you do not agree with the general statesman, with the general talk, with the general populace in the National Assembly, you are either suppressed, you are shut down, you are intimidated by the majority. And Seriaka Dixon eventually, when they had a closed door session about the state of emergency, he said that their voices were suppressed. In fact, those who wanted to object to the president's declaration of a state of emergency in Rivers State were silenced, and he had to stage a walkout. How do you see this kind of whatever? Because Natasha had said in the Senate, she said via the press, I think she had an interview with Sky News, that the Senate is run like a court. Could it be that that's basically what it is? You cannot go against any decision from the executive. You cannot oppose any decision from the executive. And anything that comes from the executive, this current National Assembly assents to it without any opposition.
It is no more than dictatorial system of government and tyrannical system of government that we are seeing under Tinubu APC administration, Esther. We fought the military because we were thinking that with military administration we don't have freedom of speech. But what I saw yesterday in that proceeding, that the Senate president meted that on a fellow member who is of the same equal. You know, everybody in the Senate is first among equal. They just appointed somebody to be their leader. And the person he was talking to selected this has also been a governor like him for 8 years in Bayelsa. And he has also selected this at the time was also the chief judge of that state of the state, Bayelsa State. He knows much about what he was wanting to raise before the Senate president shut him down. Now the Senate president has now begun to go around televisions, watching all the television to know those that are not speaking, that are speaking, wanting to speak the truth, and going to the house and telling them, I'll switch off your mind. I think it is the senators. This is just one out of 109 senators that the 108 gave him that power. And now he's using his power to ride over that total number of 108. I think it's the failure of other senators. Let's not even be talking about the APC senators now. I don't know where are the opposition senators in the National Assembly, especially in the Senate. Because I know that APC, the difference is, I think they have 56, PDP has 44, and they have the 47. I don't even know what is going on, that all the opposition senators cannot even fight for their rights, because what we saw shutting down Celesta Dixon was exactly what happened to Senator Natasha again, and we saw it again playing out, which means tyrannical system of government has taken over the legislative arm of government in Nigeria, and that's how the APC wants it. Nobody must speak against the executive, because the legislators are there to defend the executive, because he already told us that whichever bill that comes from the legislative arm, he is going to say true. That's what we are seeing, Esther.
Mr. Elvis, in the same vein with Natasha, because these are almost similar occurrences and they happen back to back. Natasha had to speak up when she felt suppressed, when she felt she couldn't be seen, and when she tried to call out some certain inadequacies, this was what happened. Although technically the Senate concluded that her suspension was based on her unruly behavior and not obeying the Senate rules, right? Now, but look at a situation like this where Professor Pat Utomi has rendered his voice on the current imbroglio with the president's state of emergency being declared in Rivers. We'll continue to talk about it because there are always developments. Either persons are reacting or on some other persons are seeing how a development can take place where, the state will come back to normalcy before that 6 months period. But Pat Utomi is saying that why was there no state of emergency declared in Lagos State when what happened at the Lagos State House of Assembly happened? For example, he said that in Rivers State, there was no need for that, according to him, despite the pipelines that were vandalized. All right. Now, the president, as we do know, after nominating Vice Admiral Ibokete Ibas, Professor Utomi faulted the president's decision, saying that the political crisis in Rivers did not warrant that state of emergency. And he stipulated that the militants in Rivers, who were supposedly blowing up pipelines during the previous administration, that the state was not even subjected to an emergency rule. So he questioned the president for not declaring a state of emergency in Lagos State during the crisis involving the Lagos House of Assembly Speaker Mudashiru Obasa and his colleagues. So that's basically what he said. He says, what is the problem in Rivers State that warranted the state of emergency? Tell me what it is. When pipelines were blowing up like popcorn in Rivers State, was there a state of emergency? Why did he not declare a state of emergency in Lagos when the assembly was running back and forth? Why Rivers? There's something about fairness, equity, and pure decency. But the presidency, through Sunday Diary, has defended the president's decision that it was vital for stability and normalcy to return in Rivers State. But 10,000 troops were deployed to that state. Our military is stretched thin because in the north they are fighting insecurity volatilely, and then they need protection as well in that region. So with this kind of comparison, would you say that the president made a hasty decision, or are Nigerians just being sentimental about it, or would we say that the sentiments coming from reactions are politically motivated, maybe because they do not like the president?
Not at all. The president, everybody has actually cheated the president that state of emergency was not warranted in any form. Nigerians are not happy. just the same way the Rivers people have been denied of their own right. We actually saw what transpired in Lagos State House of Assembly. For 2 months, Lagos State House of Assembly was shut down. Even Obasa came back and even went and, buckled all the doors and went into an office that somebody else was already appointed to be the speaker. And, the president covered it up in Gagi, and the next thing we saw them in Aso Rock, and the next thing we saw, they came out and had a group photograph with the president. Why did the president not also use that same power he has with setting the Lagos State Assembly in Broglo to also look into what was happening in Rivers? The president is speaking about the Rivers crisis. He's only mentioning the side that concerns Fubara, and he's giving judgment against Fubara. That's what we see that the president mentions. But he has forgotten that the one led to the crisis in Rivers is that there is somebody who has placed himself as a godfather who said Rivers must not work. And that is an appointee of the president. One expected that if you actually want to settle such crisis, you will bring the two together. Pandef were invited in. He invited Pandef, as powerful as Pandef. He said, go and settle what is going on in Rivers. Pandef met with him. Pandef, got home and started the mechanism of getting it settled. The next thing they now heard was that state of emergency has been declared. Why did you not invite Pandef? Why did you not give them assignment that they should go and settle whatever is going on in Rivers? And Pandef has made several efforts before then. Settled it. They met with Fubara, but Wike has never opened the door for them to be able to meet with him so that the crisis can be resolved. So everything that is going on in Rivers, Nigerians have condemned it, the world has condemned it, and we also know that it is a plan for APC to make sure that what Wike has been saying that there is already a laid-down system. There is already what he calls it. He has
Mr. Elvis. We've delved a lot in that particular situation. I think I get your point. In Osun State, for example, there was a situation that occurred today, very early this morning. Communal clashes between two communities, Ifon and Ilobu in Osun State, which prompted the governor to reimpose and extend a dusk-to-dawn curfew in an attempt to restore order. Now, we know that Osun State is a PDP state. There are permutations that these communal clashes arising now could be a form through which another state of emergency will be declared in the state. Do you think that's possible? And would the people, the indigents of the state, accept it? The PDP governors, will they accept it? Because lately the PDP has been too quiet. They just react in words, but we don't see any action from them whatsoever. In fact, let me tell you something. On X today, one of the state government appointees, as Lagos State appointees, now put up a tweet by saying, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, political leader of PDP, APC, Labour Party, SDP, all the political parties in Nigeria, literally meaning that he understands Nigerian politics more than any other person. In other words, asserting that any other form of opposition trying to come together will not work. If the president is campaigning in 2027, he would campaign and he would get it because he understands the political trajectory. Do we see that kind of political maneuvering occurring in Osun State because of this conflict, especially as crisis now has been emanating from that region?
Yeah, Osun State governor and the PDP leadership should watch their back in Osun State. I saw a message from the governor yesterday, statement that the governor was telling the secretary to APC, Chief Bashiru, that he should stop calling on the federal government to declare state of emergency in Osun State. Now, what is reigning in Nigeria now is state of emergency. Those ones that they cannot catch up through INEC, they are going to catch up through state of emergency. And that is going to be done between now and 2027. So, the most unfortunate thing, Esther, is that the PDP rank is already broken completely. So the PDP cannot issue any strong statement now, that Nigerians will actually believe again. Because if you look at PDP, says they're not able to settle the umbrella, has turned apart and they're not able to merge it. That's an issue. And again, you see what happened in Rivers. Even the South governors, some of them have also proved that are not part of it. So Osun State, as it is, Southwest, how many states are PDP states in the Southwest? They are just only two. Osun and Oyo. So if anything of that nature happens, you'll discover that every other Southwest state will support the declaration of state of emergency in Osun, and it is only Oyo State and Osun State that will lick their wounds. So I'm only calling on Governor Adeleke that in spite of the fact that his people love him and he's been doing well, but they have to watch his back. With the new trajectory in Nigeria now is that the APC can foment any trouble in any state and declare state of emergency in that state so that they can bring in an administrator who will now do their bidding towards any election that will come up in future.
Do you think this administration will address true federalism? There's an issue with no proper representation of federalism. For example, some people in this part of the world or in this region would say that any job provided in Lagos, any public job in Lagos should be given to the Southwest. If you go to the North, any job available should be given to the North. If you go to the East, any job available should be given to the East. These are calls from young Nigerians on social media. So would you say that it is high time the administration addresses this inconsistency? If we're operating a regional system of government, let's know we're operating a regional system of government. If we are no longer operating a state of federalism, a country that anyone can move and live anywhere, then why is that not declared? Because right now there are calls by persons supporting this administration against certain groups and ethnicities to no longer either reside in their region, or any job available should not be given to any other region but except indigenes of that region. So how do you describe this kind of scenario?
There is no federal system of government in Nigeria. We all know that. We were even thinking that with all the present president did in Adeco, at that time he was speaking about, Nigeria being a federal state, that he will use this opportunity God has just given him to become president of Nigeria to work in, making Nigeria a federated unit, that everybody, you can be anywhere and try and strive there and become who you are supposed to be in that region, wherever you reside. But unfortunately, we are even seeing it in his cabinet. His cabinet is populated by Lagos boys, as they call them. So many of them, you can take a closer look at his cabinet. That's to tell you that the appointment is not trickling down as supposed to be in the federal system. Esther, it's to make it even worse. Look at what is even happening in Ivory Tower. Ivory Tower, Nigeria higher institutions. Appointment of VC now have to be that dead. Nobody is looking at whether the person is qualified or not. By the time you bring a VC from another state to another federal investment in another state, you hear them, you will not hear protest. You will not hear the state saying, why is their son not appointed for a VC in that institution? So to tell you that the division has gone so polarized that even the Ivory Tower now is not even exempted from it, which was not like this in those days. We saw Northerners becoming VC in the South, and we saw Southerners becoming VC in the North. Those days when Nigerian investors were actually thriving, when foreigners would actually come here and study here. But now it has become an issue. So I'm not saying this government as the government that will be able to entrench that federal system of government, because right from his picking his cabinet to where we are today, we have already seen that it's only one-sided, and that is even why most of the northern people will tell you that Lagos boys are the one that is, in Aso Rock, are in the cabinet of Bola Ahmed Tinubu, president of Nigeria.
All right, let's move on to the trial that has resumed of Nnamdi Kanu today. I don't know if you have seen some videos. He looked calm, looked good, and very resolute, He wasn't agitated like he was the last time. And he apologized in court today. He said that he acted in anger and he was frustrated with how this case had dragged on for years now. He apologized to the judge. He apologized to Justice Binta Nyako, apologized to the prosecuting counsel led by Awomolo, and also apologized to his lawyers for his verbal attitude towards them on that very day. And then in that process, while he was speaking, he said that we must all work together. Nigeria is one. We must all pursue unity. We're one nation, and we must not forget that. We must not forget the very thing that weaves us together. A couple of persons will say, wow, this is an angle or a side of Nnamdi Kanu that a lot of persons want to see, the angle of humility, the angle of submission. But would you say that this recent approach to things will further help, or rather help the case from the prosecuting counsel to do things properly without any form of bias?
Yeah, absolutely. I was so much, glad when I saw Unadi Kanu today in the court, comported himself so well. His temperament was very well managed. I was like, this is quite different from the last court adjournments we saw when he was, ranting and shouting in the court. I don't know. I don't know what went wrong within this period. These people that managed him within this period before this, the appearance in the court today have done a very nice job. And I've also seen that even the judge has also taken a very good step today because he comported himself so well. The judge has actually fixed date now for hearing, which means we are getting closer to the deciding date now on what has been wrong between the Kanu being castrated over this number of years. So I pray that this is comportment continues within the period of the hearing, and let the judge also, make his pronouncement and give the judgment so that we'll know where he swings. Yes, preaching peace is the best way because no matter how turbulent the sea is, it gets settled over a period of time too. And even with what we saw in Gaza, we are seeing in Ukraine and Russia and all that, everybody's come to a negotiating table so that matters can be trusted. That's why we always talk about the constitutional conference we have had in Nigeria. Most of these things that are injustice, that are bringing this anger, that are bringing all this flare of anger, both in the south and the north and every part of Nigeria, are already settled in all those our constitutional conference. Bring them out. Let's begin to think of how we can begin to work with it and begin to give Nigeria a better name and a changed nation, which he has also started preaching today. So if that preaching continues in this manner, I think we are heading somewhere positive soonest.
Well, through his lawyer, Kanu Agabi, he said that we must unite, whether we're Christians, Muslims, whether we come from the east or the west, the north or the south. We must never lose sight of the fact that we are all children of God and citizens of one nation. And he said that we must reach out to one another across state and religious lines. We must forget the past and forge a new nation of peace founded on truth and justice. And he went ahead to say that we need to work ceaselessly for peace and unity. No price is too great to be paid for peace. We're never going to have peace until we're willing to go the extra mile, to turn the other cheek, and to add our coat when our cloak is taken. This approach is quite very different. He has complained of malignment. He has complained of isolation. He has complained of rejection of the Southeasterners, specifically the Igbos. And that's the reason why he started the agitation. This particular call, do you think it's a call that every other region is calling for and wanting to embrace, especially now that the very fabric that weaves us together has become very strained in this political climate?
Yeah, Esther, it's a good call. If an agitator like Kanu can even come up with this kind of call, I want the government to also emulate it so that some of these injustices that are being meted out by government should also stop. Because most of this agitation are a result of injustice. If you take a closer look at what is happening in Sudan, Sudan is a right-of nation as we speak. South Sudan that Nigeria so celebrated 2011, the world celebrated 2011 when they became the youngest baby in Africa. The same thing is happening here, all because of no peace. So such thing must not happen in Nigeria. If we begin to preach peace, whether from the east, west, north, or south, we are preaching peace. The government and all the presidency and whoever that is involved with the government must join the people to preach peace. The government must not be seen as, setting in the divide and rule, throwing spanner into the wheels, that when we are talking of peace. This kind of spoke so here today. So the government must also borrow a from their source, and all this one that we want to grab by all means, those things that are bringing the anger should be shielded. That the government in Nigeria can move forward. Any country that does not have peace will not talk of progress. You know what Nigeria is spending today on arms and ammunition, in fighting insurgency and fighting banditry and all that. Yes, we are not getting results out of it. Nigerians are losing soldiers, they are losing money, they are losing families, are becoming young women are becoming widows as a result of their loved ones died at the front line. These are not going to be. These are not issues that can solve any country's problem. So the government must work with the people to embrace peace. Peacefulness must come into Nigeria's system of government. That is what has been happening over the years. The life in the government is so much. That's what I'm causing all this anger. Then all this deprivation, favoring some other side and the other one should stop. If it is the regional constitution that we can adopt that will bring the peace, let's start it all over. Every region be able, work for the progress of this region, and let that peace that we have ever had before now reign again. And Nigeria will become an edge, to become a country that the world again will not be came back his pride in the Committee of Nations. Because it's lost over the years.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Alvis Elimihele. I sincerely do appreciate your input as well as giving us your insight on some of these issues on the World News at 6. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Esther. Have a blessed day.
All right. To wrap up the world news at 6, here again are the top stories. Northern elders send message to President Tinubu over Rivers crisis. You also heard during the news at 6 that presidency defends Tinubu's decision as legal and justified. Tinubu's government releases withheld local government allocation to Rivers sole administrator. Also, Fubara reportedly relocates to Osun State after suspension as governor. Governor Adeleke declares talks to turn curfew as Ifon-Ilobo conflict deepens. And finally, you also heard during the world news at 6 that Kanu appears in court today, sues for peace. That's a wrap on the world news at 6. My name is Esther Mwachuku. Good evening. Thank you for listening. Up next is the Evening Rush.